David Menzies for Rebel News here in Vaughan, Ontario. And you know, folks, if you had to put a slug on this story, it would be not again. That's because 46-year-old father Abdul Faruqi is dead. Why is he dead? Well, he's dead because he acted as a father, protecting his 4-year-old daughter from a home invader who was armed with lethal force. Here is the news release from the York Regional Police. Quote, on Sunday, August 31st, 2025, shortly before 1 a.m., officers attended a residence in the area of Andreda Drive and Barron Street for a report of a home invasion. On arrival, a male was located inside the house, suffering from trauma to his body. Despite life-saving efforts, he was pronounced deceased at the scene. This is disturbing on so many levels. This neighborhood in Vaughan, it's a new build. It looks like what Pierre Poilievre calls a piece of the Canadian promise. You see nice houses with driveways, with cars in the driveway, a lawn out front and out back. It's very serene, and yet in the wee hours of the morning, yet again, another home is invaded with tragic consequences. And the last few weeks, folks, it's been a bloodbath out there in Ontario, hasn't it? How about the elderly Jewish woman who was almost knifed to death at an Ottawa supermarket? How about a transgender, Danny Senecal, allegedly, who broke into a Welland home and sexually assaulted a toddler? By the way, why don't we stop sugarcoating? It was rape of a toddler. And by the way, the transgender part is no longer being reported in mainstream media. That's another story, and we'll have that story for you later this week when we go to Welland. How about 8-year-old Javai Roy? He was the Toronto boy, asleep in his bedroom when a stray bullet from a gangbanger hit him in the head and killed him. And then, of course, there's Jeremy McDonald. He is the person who in Lindsay, in the wee hours of the morning, 3:20 a.m. to be precise, had a reprobate by the name of Mike Breen show up. Allegedly. Armed with a lethal force weapon, a crossbow, no less. And, Jeremy McDonald, for having the temerity to defend himself, he's now facing 2 charges: aggravated assault and assault with a weapon. And that speaks to the bigger problem that we have with these home invasions, doesn't it? The fact that under our so-called castle law, there are so many conditions and provisions that make the full use of defense, well, basically impossible. Remember how last week Pierre Poilievre weighed in with what I consider to be a bases-loaded home run in terms of public policy. Namely, someone breaks into your home, you have the right to lethal force if necessary. Here, check it out.
The use of force, including lethal force, is presumed reasonable against an individual who unlawfully enters a house and poses a threat to the safety of anyone inside. The proposed amendment is reasonable and prudent. It applies only to the unlawful entry of a home and preserves proportionality. Simply put, it means you have the right to use force to defend your home and your family against someone who threatens you and who has entered illegally.
And of course, Doug Ford, he weighed into this as well. Check it out.
These scumbags shot him right in front of his kids, shot him dead twice. Just imagine, what the trauma these kids are going to go through for the rest of their lives. And, I could tell you story after story about this, but we need to do something. I talked to the federal government over the weekend. Enough is enough. People are done with the crimes every single day. Innocent people are getting their doors kicked in by a bunch of thugs, a bunch of murderers, criminals, and you go to root cause. It's the weak criminal code that needs to be changed by the federal government.
Yeah, but you know what? I think really the tears Doug Ford is shedding are of the crocodilian variety, as my cameraman Maurizio and I showed you last week, folks, where Doug Ford lives in West End, Toronto. There are 2 Toronto police SUVs with armed police officers protecting him 24/7. So the Ford family, and I'm happy for this, they can go to bed without a care in the world. And Doug Ford never has to worry about him getting his hands dirty. But for the rest of us, we're on our own. And if you dare fight back with lethal force, you're in a heap of trouble. And let's not forget, this is the very same city that several months ago, a homeowner came out to defend his car, a Lamborghini, from being stolen by 4 thugs. He fired a warning shot, and you guessed it, he was charged. And the charges include, and it's a list, discharge of a firearm, possession of weapon for dangerous purpose, careless storage of a firearm, and unauthorized possession of a prohibited/restricted weapon. You know, by the way, that careless storage of a firearm, that means he had the firearm nearby to defend him and his property, something that in so many American states is de rigueur. But here in Canada, no, they'd rather you lock up your firearms and your ammo in separate safes and have trigger locks on it. Basically, by the time you get the thing unlocked and loaded, you're probably dead. In any event, we desperately need the castle law reformed here. We desperately need a further crackdown on crime. But guess what? The Justice Minister, he is oblivious to these ideas. For example, here is what the tone-deaf Justice Minister Sean Fraser wrote on X after the Pierre Poilievre announcement. Quote, "This isn't the Wild West, it's Canada. Canadians deserve real solutions that make us safer, not slogans that inspire fear and chaos for Pierre's political survival," end quote. You know, folks, doesn't that speak volumes about Sean Fraser? He destroyed the immigration system in Canada. He was perhaps Canada's worst housing minister, but in the Liberal government, you fail upwards. Now he is the Justice Minister. I have news for Minister Fraser. It's already the Wild West. If you'd get out of your ivory tower and venture into some of the big cities and even small towns in our great Dominion, you would discover that safety is going by the wayside. I should correct myself when I say it's the Wild West. It's partly Wild West. And by that, folks, I mean it is the guys with the black hats, aka the villains. They're the ones armed to the teeth. They're the ones shooting up streets. They're the ones getting out on bail and probation. And meanwhile, the rest of us, well, we're supposed to cross our fingers and hope the police will come to the scene in the nick of time. This is an absolute disgrace. And look, here is the latest consequence. Mr. Faruqi, he will never see his young daughter grow up. He will never become a grandfather. And meanwhile, the hunt goes on for the villain, the evil person that did this. And you know, I'm looking around this neighborhood, so many houses, very similar. It could have been anyone. This was a crime of opportunity, clearly. And these thieves could have gone into any house. And I mean, imagine that. If the story is true, they were pointing a loaded gun at the head of a 4-year-old girl. And Sean Fraser is worried about the Wild West. Like I said, it's already here. We need to toughen the laws. We need to be able to defend ourselves legally, even if it means lethal force. We have to crack down on crime. We have to stop this revolving door. Canada is becoming a joke, but a joke without a punchline, because this is a tragedy. We'll keep on this file. We'll keep exposing these atrocities, folks. Signing off from Vaughan, Ontario, it's David the Menzoid Menzies. Abdul Faruqi is dead. He was defending the life of his 4-year-old daughter, and he paid the ultimate price. You know, in many respects, if he had fought back with a knife, a baseball bat, he could have been facing charges simply for doing that. So-called unreasonable, unnecessary force. This has to stop, folks. We need to improve the castle laws in this Dominion, or we will continue to be victimized. We need this government to stop the crackdown of firearms used by Saskatchewan duck hunters, whereas the gangbangers are going out with illegal handguns with impunity. Will you do me a favor? Will you go to castlelawnow.com? That's castlelawnow.com. Put your name to the petition, and if you're able to, kindly make a donation so that Rebel News can continue to bring you the other side of the story.